Thought I'd go through this patch notes of the latest PTU with you, kind of wandering through Orison and maybe end up on one of the Connies. We'll see how it goes. This is not going to be based on my chapter series because last I remember, we were hanging out with a whole crew off-site, to say the least. We definitely left Orison. So, there was a recent PTU changeover just last night. This would be Tuesday. We're on patch 7630010. This is still wave 1, unfortunately. I would love to see the PTU be available to everyone, and I have a sneaking feeling that it's getting closer, very close, to basically access for everybody. Let's actually see how this elevator does. I bet it takes me to the lobby quickly. See how it blurs out when it gets real fast. And let's go. I'm not going to touch it. Let's see if it takes me up to the rooftop. Let's see if hopefully I don't break the elevators. Anyway, the testing focus for this patch is Crusader, Orison Landing Zone, Connie Taurus, the law system V2 surrender. So, like, when the advocacy asked you to surrender because you have something naughty in your cargo, the idea being that you will be teleported to the prison without some rough shootout or something, and eventually you will have a much, much lower sentence, and you should not be out that ship. At the very least, it'll be reduced, if not fully, no weight for your ship. Well, because it hasn't been destroyed, it was confiscated along with you. That's at least the way I understand it. We'll see about that last point. I've made a point before about talking about this, that's absolutely necessary, especially for players that have less ships, or if you're caught in your daily driver. It's already bad enough you're sitting in real-world time, or having to quicken that with all this mining and everything else in the prison system. And then when you come out, having to wait yet again for a timer. That timer should be able to kick, at the very least at the beginning of your sentence, especially if you've surrendered. Anyway, Power Management V2 is another focus of this patch. So that's including the capacitors that we've heard so much about, from propulsion, shields, weaponry, and the triangle that it is created, and you can adjust, and it actually means a lot now what you change. And there's been some tweaks to that we're going to get into. There is missile operator mode, which allows you to more accurately fire your missiles and actually understand what you're aiming at, and also your co-pilot can fire off missiles as well. Very effectively, the exact same type of UI. I will note that right now, countermeasures do not work. Or sorry, the way it's phrased is flares do not, missiles do not track flares. So translation, the flares don't work. Other counts, I think there's another type of countermeasure that may be able to do something for you, but that's neither here nor there. I do not think it's a coincidence that an Atlas-class barge is wandering past at the exact height of the rooftop of the residence, but I am appreciative of it. Art team, you guys did a great job. The guys and gals of the art team, thank you for your hard work. I hope someday that we can, not just get on these. You can land on these barges, by the way. I hope there's a lot more content to them. I know that's part of the gameplay teams are talking about. That's great. Even FPS type stuff inside there, even though it's an armistice zone, which is pretty dang cool. That reminds me a lot of the Battlefield 2142 days with the Titan matches, where you'd have, the equivalent of 2 of those barges running around with shields and all sorts of exciting stuff, and both teams are trying to take each other's out, and there's missiles on the ground to fight over. I would love to get my hands on 2 of those and have community events where you respawn on there, Titan style, and duke it out. I think it'd be a lot of fun. Anyway, the final testing focus for this patch is the radar scanning and ping tier 0 system. So this is the localized ping systems and scanning and radar. The idea being you bring up that new HUD for scanning, and it will use the IR and the EM radiation that is created by other players and NPC ships to be able to spot them. Currently, visual is not considered, so per John Crew, on one of the more recent Star Citizen live discussions that he was brought on. He stated that a visual right now does not count. So if you're hiding behind an asteroid or hiding behind a mountain, the ping will still give you away, or and vice versa. If you're searching for someone or an NPC or a target for your mission or whatever, the IR and the EM will be what you're talking about here. IR is infrared, so that is the heat signature off of their engines, off of their cooling systems, ventilating. When they fire their weapons, it should escalate that over time. When they overheat their systems, it should increase their signature of that. EM being electromagnetic, so their comms, their own radars, if they fire off a ping, they'll light up like a Christmas tree for your systems. That's what we're talking about. We are not talking about scanner probes, by the way, either on this patch. That is going to come down the line. Now, the EU feature team did say flat out that is the future. Think like EVE Online scanner tactics, where you fire out probes, you use bigger probes, or you have certain settings on the probes that have a wider angle, and then over time they get less and less and less until you find the target that is an NPC or PvP situation. And even some mission types will be, you have to seek out this target. They won't just give you a beacon to warp to and you shoot something and you come, or you take something and you come back and return it. It's going to be more reward for that scanning gameplay, and exploration will greatly benefit. Okay, so that's the high level stuff. And you're probably wondering, like, well, you're rehashing a few things. That's true. But what I can confidently tell you is that radar scanning and ping, for example, was not exactly ironed out in the previous testing phases. In this one, it's actually a focus of the patch. And it seems like, based on what we're seeing, that it's being actually usable. The same thing goes for the Constellation Taurus, and we'll talk about why it's more usable, and also the Orison landing zone. Those things specifically, and I guess Crusader technically too, those things specifically are really getting nicely tuned in this patch. So the first thing up is a major topic for everyone. Last video, I think it was called Major Changes, covered this pretty well, but the discussion of the size 1 through size 4 weapon systems being heavily tweaked, and the same with the shields. So what they've done this patch is they've tuned it a bit more, and size 1 through size 4 ballistic repeaters and Gatlings have been returned to extremely powerful but very low on ammo. They changed the caterpillar turrets over to repeaters due to this, and they also decreased the weapon regen delay for every energy weapon. There was a lot of complaints about ammunition issues. Basically, there's a new ammo count, if you haven't been following along on every one of these videos, for these energy weapons. So just to be clear, you still don't have to resupply them, like go down and restock at a pad, or buy ammunition. But your system has to create that ammo. And if you take power away from via energy management, aka capacitor, if you take the capacitor power away from weaponry and you put it towards, say, shields and propulsion, it will regen less and less ammo based on the percentage it gets, and vice versa. If you give it more power, it will regen faster. So they have had a decrease in the weapon regen delay for every energy weapon. When they're actually fired, they will not be regenerating. And what they're finding is players need that regen to be decreased. The delay in the regen to be decreased due to the fact that the engagements are kind of pulsed. So if you're doing a boom and zoom type gameplay where you're shooting at each other, trying to create space to fight again, during that time when you're trying to create that space and then come back in for another fight, your weapon was not regenerating energy ammunition. And the energy weapons were balanced around the idea of having this regenerative ammunition. They do less damage than, say, a Scattergun, which is an extreme example of a ballistic weapon that's insane damage at extremely close range and has an extremely small amount of ammunition. But the trade-off was supposed to be that the energy weapons enjoy practically unlimited ammo as long as you're able to wait for it. That's basically what they've done to make it make sense. They've also reduced EMP damage. They removed inactive powered off weapons from convergence calculations. So like where you're shooting, like that little aiming spot, that you're trying to see where your weapons hit. And you may notice that that spot's a little different when you have multiple different kinds of weapons. Well, when it's doing that convergence calculation, if the weapon's powered off, it will no longer be part of that, which is a nice little touch. Increase the Terrapin's hull hit points. The little Terrapin needs every little help it can get. Increase the health of Constellation and variants for various multiple parts. Now, this is something Jack mentioned, one of the viewers mentioned, about when he was out in a Taurus. There was a lot of problems with the Taurus being basically torn apart by a small fighter, and specifically a Mantis, interceptor, type thing. And he said basically, hey, what's the deal here? We keep talking about time to kill is going to be increased. We talked about all these different things where larger ships are supposed to be favored. When it comes to fighting against small ships, at least they can stay alive against them longer. And he's right. That's a problem. So this is CIG's attempt to kind of really look at the constellations across the board and right size a lot of their health needs, basically increasing that health until armor is actually rolled out. The larger ships, even a medium/large that kind of dances around that size with the Connies, they will have decent armor for what they are. I'm not saying like military heavy armor or something, but they will have decent armor on top of their already pretty nicely buffed shields they recently got. So combining those two things along with the large class, medium to largest class ship hull, the Connies should be doing pretty damn well. And if I was to guess, they buffed the narcells again. That's where the engines at the back are converged on the ship. Those 4 engines on the back of the ship, your main thrusters. Because when you start busting them off, the ship can't even run away anymore. It's basically a sitting duck trying to rely on its auxiliary thrusters. So if I was to guess, I'm betting they probably buffed them. They probably buffed the cockpit, a few other key locations to really make this ship a little more survivable and be able to fight a little bit better. Or at least increase its survivability. And then you can start seeing where their mind is going with a few other things. They slightly decrease the health of size 1 shields, which directly nerfs the smaller ships. Increased health and regen of size 2 shields, so they're trying to buff that slightly larger ship or the heavy class fighters, and reduced P52 and P72 health. So I think they're looking at the Connie and they're saying, geez, we're buffing the Connie itself. We need to nerf something. They already took the 1 shield generator off of both of them. I'm not quite sure why, or at least most of the snubs they've taken this second shield off of. But they took its health away as well. I guess they still thought it was pretty strong. And this is a big one. Reduced arrow, hull, and nose slightly health. And streamline hit points on the Reliant. Both, well, not the Reliant, not so much, but the arrow was a meta fighter. And I'd love to see exactly how it falls with the new shield changes, with the new weapon changes that are coming online, and with the lesser hull and nose strength. By having that weak spot, by having a weak chin, so to speak, the arrow will have an interesting place in the lineup, and I think it won't be the go-to anymore for some players, depending on if it's just 10 hit points or not. One of the frustrations when I read these patch notes is I don't have exact numbers in front of me. Like, did it drop 10 hit points out of 600, or did it drop, hundreds of hit points out of 600? I'm just picking a random number, and I'm trying to give you a frame of reference for is it a major change or not. They say the word slightly, but slightly can mean a significant amount. Slightly can mean 10%, slightly can mean 15%. We just don't know. They also swapped the default layout of the F7C with laser repeaters instead of ballistic Gatlings, and that was due to the low ammo, which makes a lot of sense. I've already said before that the Heartseeker, the F7C Super Hornet with the Heartseeker model was actually one of my favorites of the Hornet series because it had the laser on top. Now, they also reduced the delay on the size 3 and the size 4 shield generators. Recall the size 4s are massive shield generators, and size 3s are no slouch either. These delays that they're talking about is the regeneration delays. They have to be out of combat, or at least not getting shot at and taking damage for a certain amount of time before they start regenerating that shield. Remember, the regen speed on those large shields and capital shields is extraordinarily slow. The whole point is that they're buffer. So having a reduced delay on their regeneration is not that big of a deal. Although we are talking about a lot of hit points here. So I guess, once again, we have to see what those reduced delays are, how significant they are. For smaller changes, they had the ballistic change to small ships, which say they have much more limited ammo, but significant damage. They're meant to be sparingly, carefully, and maybe not well suited for drawn out engagements, but are very powerful if well timed. I don't feel this is a major change. We already had scatterguns in the game that were the same concept. Super close range, sucker punch type weapons that were meant to knock something, and that's that. Having a small amount of ammo for such a weapon makes a lot of sense. It balances it. I'm curious about how this will factor in with the concepts that they've already explained before about larger size ships, shields, hull, armor not being as damageable by small ships, and will this allow that kind of a loophole for the small ship? Not just a small loophole, but a major loophole. I'm curious how that's going to work out. They've talked about how they're changing some of the law systems for armistice zones, and that's important for a couple reasons. But the only thing they really hit on, unfortunately, in this specific topic, this go around, is the remove missile dumbfire as a crime in armistice zones. They simply made the armistice zone trigger from any hit to hits over the friendly fire threshold. So, like, they're not going to punish you for shooting the missile. They punish you for doing damage with the missile, as I understand that. And the friendly fire rules, like you're in the party, and there's only so much damage. That's okay. I still don't really understand exactly why that was necessary. Maybe people were accidentally firing off a missile, cracking off a missile while they were undocking, and then they got in trouble. That's probably what that's going on with. It's neither here nor there for me. Remove missile dumbfire. Let's say updated default zoom position when opening the star map. Locked ping controls to the scanning mode. Added the menu option for increasing missile count to loop or not loop. Updated IFCS landing dust minimum angles for the directional effect. Added... Whoa, guy's stuttering hard. Added the game settings option to lock ping controls to scan mode. These are all little quality of life improvements. I think that the star map's always been a trouble, where you're like zooming out like crazy trying to actually use anything. That's always been a frustration. I find it amazing that one of the testing focuses is the constellation Taurus, and they're asking people to test it, and it's not given to you in the PTU. Talk about an oversight. All these ships, I don't own all these ships, by the way. I own quite a lot of ships, but I don't own all these. And I can tell you that what they did is they have like almost every ship in the game available to test. But for some reason, the RSI ships are not. I own the Phoenix, but I don't own a Taurus. I don't own an Andromeda and Aquila. So unfortunately, what I was hoping to test the Connie Phoenix. That is the Emerald Edition, and I'd also like to test the Taurus, but I cannot because they both had changes in this patch that are pretty big. Phoenix also did. I'll show you why while we go there. But okay, so this is kind of like an informal thing. We're kind of like treating this like a chapter, but it's not. We're kind of going through the patch notes. I figure this is less dry than going step by step through the patch notes without something to look at and talk about and kind of adventure through. I hope this format works well, and if you don't feel it does, let me know. Or changes, like, hey, here's a small change I'd recommend. Please let me know in feedback, or reach out to me in Discord, like many of you have, and I greatly appreciate those discussions. Always. That is not lip service. Believe me, I'll tell you if the day I don't want to do this anymore. But I enjoy the heck out of this stuff. That's why I do it. And I enjoy forming the community. I feel that there's there's a place for somebody who truly has a passion for this game to be able to look out for other folks who love this game as well. Just thought I'd throw that in there if I haven't heard that yet. So, in the ships and vehicles changes for this patch, we've got the default power plant on the F7CS Hornet Ghost changed over. From what I heard from folks that have the Hornet Ghost, well, specifically one guy, he felt that the Hornet Ghost is actually slower now because you're not able to throw as much juice at the propulsion. I haven't been able to test that yet, but that's another thing I'd like to take a look at. Maybe not in this exact patch, but this is something that I think will stay. Might get around to it, hopefully. I do want to try out the Hornet Ghost. I've never actually flew one before. They're really cool looking ships if you haven't seen one. Little stealthy things. They got a really cool black paint job. Also, the Aurora has a slightly widened and softened entrance proxies to help with placing objects inside. Anything to help the new player experience is welcome to me. I'm absolutely cool with them spending some time on the much needed lookout for folks with the Aurora. So I'm glad they're doing some look at the Aurora. As soon as we leave this hangar, if it doesn't blow up on me, because the XXL hangars are having an issue at Orson. I don't know if this is an XXL hangar or not. I don't think it is, but we'll find out real soon. Who knows? It doesn't look like one. Doesn't look like a capital hangar, but we'll find out. I think we're clear. So remember, in Orison, if you ever need to hop out of the pilot seat or go AFK or work on something, you want to start up. Don't go down and do that. You might have an uncomfortable experience. The pressure is down, not up. Less pressure up. That's always the good thing about this. Stay up. Get away from the flight paths that people are coming out of, especially in a sideways environment like that, where they're shooting out the hangar sides. People tend to go faster there. If they have to go up out of like an opening, like say Lorville, for example, is a great example where you have to constantly go upwards. As long as you're not upwards, you're safe. Well, in Orison, you've got a different ball of wax here. You've got people shooting out the side, and they tend to go really fast because they don't feel so like they have to be so comfortable or careful, I should say, with their trajectory. So if you just scoot out the front and then you just sit still, even down or up slightly, you might find somebody smack into you, especially with how this place gets at night. Anyway, so they updated the lighting in the Constellation cockpits, and I gotta tell you, I don't know if I see a difference. It certainly looks brighter. It is possible that the different versions had different amounts of lighting passes on them. You know, maybe the Connies was Phoenix specifically was doing all right already. I'm not sure, but I don't know. I actually will say the lighting on the seats looks a little brighter, like the actual stitching and things like that when it's dark out, without the sun in the air or without a daylight. Sometimes I will say that it is pretty dark in here, but it's hard to describe. It's not dark. It's like, how do I describe this? Basically, there's less details on the seats and on the modules. That's about it. I've heard you can dock on all of these, although I'm not quite sure. I don't want to get in trouble. But at the same time, I really do want to dock on this thing. This one looks like it's full of cargo. I haven't seen this one like this before. I could have sworn... Well, I've only been on one of these. I could have sworn the one I was on did not have a bunch of cargo on the back of it. Let's find out. It is the PTU after all. Sometimes I feel like the designers and the artists and everybody, they kind of think like us. Even people that don't want to land properly. I don't know why I did that at the last second. I apologize. I know that looked terrible. I know you can blame me. Sure, laugh. But I didn't. I don't know why it gunned me forward. But yeah. Okay. I did not. This color's different back here. So this is brighter. It's rendering the seats better. And there's an actual color difference. It almost looks like this color belongs on the emerald, to be honest. So there is two Connie Phoenixes. There is a Phoenix, which is the regular one. This is the one you're sitting in, that you're watching. And then there's the Emerald Edition, which was the Phoenix that was sold for like St. Patrick's Day and such. And I actually want one of those. I'm such a huge Phoenix fan. I'd like both. But as I understand it, they added a green tint to the Connie Phoenix. Added new emerald tint to the Constellation Emerald. What they mean by that is the Constellation Phoenix Emerald. I can't help but notice this is a green tint on a regular Phoenix. I think this belongs on the Connie Phoenix Emerald, and it is accidentally on the regular Phoenix. So I'll be putting it in a incident, an incident for this in the IC, and we'll see how that goes. They did fix the table, as they mentioned later on in the bug list. This was nicknamed the drip table, at least by me. I don't know if that's the official term everybody else was using, but they did fix that. We may blow up in a second because I can feel the vehicles bumping. Who knew being on an unstable and supported barge is unstable? That light is way brighter to emanate the projector. Some small things I noticed. I am going to try to get this ship off of the big ship before it blows up. I may not succeed. We'll see. You know what? You know what? We're going to put this Phoenix back in for some work to get the lights fixed anyway, right? So why don't we just wander around the barge? Screw it. I don't know why those doors did that. Maybe because the ship's taking a bunch of damage, I don't know. One of the biggest things I don't know why it's tripping me out so much, but I keep feeling like I need to wear a spacesuit, and I keep panicking, thinking, why am I not got my suit on to go outside? It just feels like Orison's the kind of place that would need a spacesuit, but it doesn't. Shockingly, it doesn't. Oh yeah, this is definitely built for FPS gameplay. You can just see it feels a lot like those ship container missions, like from the SOCOM games or from the Call of Duty games or the Battlefield port games. You know, Battlefield 2 had like a port that had like a lot of these shipping containers. You can just see the layering of it, like the whole areas that people can hide in, and you got to sort out and search. Anyway, so the list of bugs that are fixed is pretty much a lot of interesting smaller stuff. Like the Orison had its polishing pass done, and a lot of the bugs related to Orison they tried to fix. They had flickering lighting issues on the Orison shuttles they fixed. They fixed face-over IP camera systems that were not focused when players were sitting in turrets. See, they don't let this unlock. I'm not going to phase through this door. Nope. And they also had a bunch of enter ship animations that they fixed that in their words, they try to make less glitchy. They clearly want you to operate on this part of the barge. See that blue like highlight around it? That's really interesting to me. Anyway, the ships that are docked with the Constellation, they made some fixes to those. They also attached and removing optics from specific guns and fixed up alignments on guns, so there's a little bit of FPS gameplay. The crew elevator on the RSI Constellation Andromeda should no longer be missing its platform surface texture. So that means it felt like you were walking up in a visible elevator. They fixed that. That was that forward elevator that we got off of on the Phoenix just now. This guy right here. This one. On the Andromeda, though. And these were the NAR cells, by the way, I was talking about earlier. These NAR cells are huge, and they're big targets. And each one of them is 25% of the main thrusters. There, there, and there. All the way over there. So, if one of these gets blown off, you're in deep trouble. If two of them gets blown off, you're pretty much a sitting duck. You have 50% of your energy kind of gone immediately of your main thruster power, which is most of the speed you get. And speed is life in combat, in running away, and anything. So it's just some thoughts. They probably reinforce these. They also reinforce the cockpit, I suspect. And probably the VTOL systems. Things like that would allow them to keep mobility. Because once the small things peck off your mobility, they have a much easier time at killing something large. Remember, they got to chew through that buffer. The bartender is back at the G-Lock bar in Area 18. I know there's going to be some people thrilled about that. That's a pretty popular spot for form-ups in the community, at least it used to be. The Demon Fang combat knife asset is no longer missing. I don't even know which combat knife that is. I know there was some subscriber knives, and there's been knives in game. It sounds like a subscriber knife, and it's too fancy for it not to be. And finally, they fixed a whole bunch of crashes. 4 client-side, 3 server-side, 2 server deadlocks, and fixed multiple back-end service crashes. Fixes like that are kind of like the they're kind of like the hero we don't really ask for, but we need. A lot of people complained about 30Ks that seem to be nothing. A lot of those 30Ks are a whole combination of different crashes on your side, on the server side, and especially when you 30K, when the server 30, because you 30K and this is because of a server issue, you won't be able to just load back in. If you crash your client, in many cases now, you can re-load your instance, especially if you're in a party. I've found that multiple times we've been able to do that while shooting divisions and some other things. And that's really nice. Not being able to have to go through all the process to get a ship again and reset and everything else. Just literally load back into a crashed character and you're back. That has to be brought way, way more reliably in line. Like, it should be like a notable thing for that to happen to somebody, as long as they have even just the most basic of systems and 16 gigs of RAM, etc., with at least some kind of paging file. It's also going to be a PSA, by the way. If you have 16 gigs of RAM, don't forget to put at least, I would honestly say 6 gigs in your paging file, preferably 8 if you got that to spare. All a paging file does is it takes part of your SSD or whatever hard drive you have, preferably the SSD, and it creates this area where you can add RAM. So it can offload off of the main RAM into that loaded area. No, it's never going to be as good as actual RAM that's proper RAM, but that virtual file size can allow a lot of times save you from crashing to desktop in Star Citizen, especially if you're under the 16 gig yoke. Even if you're at 32, it's probably a good idea to keep that paging file around 6 gigs at the minimum. And especially if you're going to be recording video or audio or both, or doing face over IP or some other advanced system that you're adding on top of your Star Citizen and your Discord and everything else that you're often using. All that stuff takes up RAM, guys and gals. Don't forget that. So that's all I got for the actual discussion here. I would say that if I was to predict where PTU is going, I take a look at all these fixes, and I mean, they're getting into like the cycling camera issues, like the F4 and being able to do proper cycling of cameras and stuff like that. While you're on a ship, while you're in person, I take a look at fixed an issue that allowed AI NPC pilots to turn their ships faster than allowed. You know, these are tuning things. I would strongly suspect at the very least that in this week we will see a full PTU iteration, as in it's not just going to be wave 1 or whatever. It's going to be everybody who is a backer has access to the PTU. I would strongly suspect that by this Friday we will see a PTU for everyone, and it will not look much different than what's out there now. I'm going to include a link underneath to the full rundown of this patch. Be sure to give feedback on this patch in that Spectrum link that I'm giving you. If you see something that really stands out, or hey, this is a really terrible idea, please get it in there. There's also a Patch Watch forum post I'd like to remind everyone to take a look at. There's devs that have been active in that post and on that thread, and constantly saying back to us like, hey, we didn't think about that, or yes, we've already had that in our sites and we're working on it. And a lot of what I'm seeing in these patch notes feel like they've come from at least some of those discussions in the Patch Watch, or at least the devs were acknowledging we were already working on it, and now we're seeing the fruits of that labor in there. So the folks that have been posting in the Patch Watch and upvoting other people's things that are issues, people that have been posting in IC, the issue council, and making sure that those things are being seen, and upvoting the ones that you're and submitting your backup to verify, like, hey, I'm also experiencing this issue. Keep up the good work. The community has been very active for 3.14, and that's a good thing. I know it seems like a lot of negatives about a lot of crash talk and a lot of 30K talk and a lot of issues and frame rate discussion, but honestly, the frame rate is fantastic right now. My settings are on medium, though. I am recording at the same time as in the game. I have seen nothing but consistency in the past two patches. I think I had 130K on the last one. That's it. So take it what you will, but it's getting a lot better fast. And I don't know. I don't have an amazing computer. 7,700K, guys. So that's all I got for you now. This is kind of an informal discussion, kind of an update on what we're seeing in this PTU iteration. Still on wave 1, unfortunately, for 3.14, specifically the build 7630010. I hope to hear another patch iteration, hopefully for all backers to enjoy, coming up very, very soon. I'm also going to include in my card at the end here a reminder about how to get on the PTU, and if you go towards the end of that video, that'll guide you through setting up for the PTU and how to efficiently do it without having to download immense data files. Just change over only the changes from the last patch, so 3.13.1 over to 3.14 PTU. And then I also, towards the end of that video, there is a great discussion about what will get you into the upper waves. So if you're looking at this and you're going, I want to be there, I want to be standing on that barge staring at the clouds with you, well, first of all, you can. I'm always on live servers, I guess that's saying, the PTU servers and live servers, and no problem hanging out with people. But more importantly, you can do it yourself and get out here through a couple different methods to boost you up about where you are in the waves. They're on that video. Check it out. That'll do it for me tonight. Or welcome to this morning, I guess, by the time this renders, when I wake up and publish it. I wish you all a wonderful day.